So, my mother didn't have a financial roadmap. Her parents didn't have a financial roadmap. They didn't know what literacy was. It was survival. Those I deserve words can get you in a whole bunch of
Listen.
trouble because those will turn into three words after a while. I don't deserve to have bad credit. Or I
Right.
wish I had at 18. If you don't know what financial literacy is, the first thing you're going to do is get a credit card.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to run it up. You're not going to pay the bill.
Nah.
And now your credit is destroyed. So I spent.
This is the authentic exchange. No mask, no filter, no fake champagne. We vibing raw, heart to heart, grooving through the pain, tearing fear apart. Is the authentic exchange. Yeah, this is the authentic exchange.
Welcome to The Authentic Exchange, where we believe that stories have the power to shift perspective, restore agency, and remind you that you're not navigating life alone. Today's conversation is about legacy, not as a buzzword, but as a responsibility. My guest today is Terrance Malone. Terrance is a good friend, a former client. Terrance, will you introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah. So my name is Terrance Malone. I am an author, a husband, a believer, an executive, a father, a friend. Did I leave anything off?
I don't think so.
I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm very excited, and this is actually my very first podcast, so I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Listen, I've been waiting on this conversation for a while, man. I'm really, really excited about it. From the moment that I read the book, man, I was really, really excited. Absolutely love the book. It feels like, to me, like a love letter to your children. Just how you poured out so much in terms of just a bunch of information, foundational stuff, like you said, the blueprint. And then even what was so special to me was the blessing at the end, man. And so I love that, man. That really just, I was like, oh, wow, man, this is something different. So I'm happy to have you. I appreciate you taking the time to come out. You mentioned a whole lot in the book, man. I think from some of our previous conversations, I realized that you grew up in Mississippi, but you mentioned growing up in Mississippi. You mentioned your grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the early experiences, people or influences that you feel really shaped the mindset and kind of helped develop who you are today?
Oh man, there's so many. I think about my grandfather, and a story my mother always tells me is that the day that I was born, my grandfather spoke a blessing over me. He told me from the minute that I showed up that I was different.
Okay.
And he quote, I quote, this boy gonna be somebody.
Okay.
So I think when you come into the world that way, there's certainly a lot of expectations. I was born to a teen mom. So I walked into the world with a lot of things stacked against me in terms of being a man of color, being born to a teen mom, not having his father as an everyday influence, but I was always surrounded by love.
Okay.
So my father was very much a part of my life.
Okay.
He was an example. I always like to say that my mother and her side of the family taught me love.
Okay.
But my father's side of the family taught me to dream and dream big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's important. I think, looking at and just thinking about that, the ability to dream, like you said before, when you have all of these different things stacked against you. My mother was a teen mother when she had me and my brother. And so, I know and I hear myself, I see myself in those pages. When I was reading, I was like, oh man, dang, what? This is my story as well. And so it's phenomenal to have somebody give you that. I feel like I was fortunate to be around some individuals myself growing up that poured into me and spoke those words of life over me in the same way. And just said, hey man, you're gonna be somebody. You can be more than what you come from.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that, one of the things that you wrote about in the book is that survival is a trap when it becomes the only plan. What financial habits did you inherit, and which did you have to unlearn?
All of them. So, my mother didn't have a financial roadmap. Her parents didn't have a financial roadmap. They didn't know what literacy was. It was survival, like having food on the table, having lights on, having the heat on. Like, you're blessed because there's so many people that didn't have those things. I grew up in a nice house in my grandparents' house as a little kid, but it was right next to the projects.
Okay.
So every morning I got a chance to see how I lived versus someone that wasn't as fortunate as me live. So, it was an eye-opening thing, but at the same time we're living day to day, check to check. So I think the shift for me, man, it didn't happen until I was in my 30s. At 18, if you don't know what financial literacy is, the first thing you're going to do is get a credit card.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to run it up. You're not going to pay the bill.
No.
And now your credit is destroyed. So I spent, a lot of my late teen years from the time I was 18 until the time I was 30 repairing my credit.
Okay.
But I was fortunate enough to buy my first house at 24.
Okay.
I bought my second house at 29.
Okay.
But because I didn't have that firm financial foundation and I wasn't financially literate, I didn't get my next house until I was in my early 40s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite the journey, raising a family, trying to navigate corporate America, going to college at night, but still living in that survival mode and not really getting those things figured out until, much later. I was in my early 40s when I really started to learn the best way to navigate.
Okay. Let me ask this. So, early 40s, is that when your mindset shifted more towards legacy? Or is that when your mindset shifted more towards just having a better understanding of finance?
It was the better understanding of finance. Just over these last, I think COVID is what really brought me to a point where I started thinking about legacy and what I wanted my legacy to look like.
Okay.
God set us all down. So you had to sit back and reflect and think about the things that you've done in your life and what you want to be remembered by. So, as I started to learn, it was from a perspective of I don't want my kids to go through the same journey that I went through, that my mother went through, and that my grandparents went through. I want them to have the tools that I didn't have. So I started talking to them about financial literacy early, like 16, 17 years old. And it's from that perspective of wanting to create a legacy and making sure that they had the head start that I didn't.
Okay. I'm going to ask a couple questions here.
Okay.
So, one, I saw the influence of you talking with one of your children, just because we had conversations. So I can remember your son coming in, sitting down, and we having haircuts, and me just picking his brain, just having conversations with him, and I could see just the amount of knowledge that he had, the awareness of finance. It blew me away.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I still talk and speak about your son to this day. I brag on him just in terms of like how much further down the line he has gotten, than even some adults that I know. And so just to look at it and see it, like I said, reading it and understanding what it was like, okay, all right, this all makes sense now.
Yeah,
this all makes sense. So you said COVID happened and God set us all down, and so it was around that time that you really began to kind of start thinking about your legacy, what you were leaving, what you wanted your legacy to look like. Legacy, I tell you what is legacy to you? Define legacy for me.
Oh, man.
Okay.
To me, legacy best represents growth.
Okay.
So how do we continue to push forward? How do we continue to evolve? Again, when my great-grandchildren think about me, one, I want them to know who I am and what I meant to the family, but I also want them to speak about me and my contributions and how I helped to change the trajectory.
Okay.
So when I think about legacy, I think about not just one generation beyond me. I'm thinking 2, 3, 4 generations beyond me, and the mark that I can leave the world overall. So not just my family, but also, the people that I've been able to mentor or impact in any way.
Okay. Is there a finish line with legacy, or how do you know that you've accomplished it? Is there something that you looking at some signs, you can check some boxes, or is there something tangible, or like, is it something that you want, the baton just to continue to go?
I think it's continued progress. So I don't think it ever stops. I think it's always something that's evolving. Had you asked me back in 2019, 2018, if you ever think you'd write a book, it would have been an emphatic no.
Okay.
But it was the conversations that I was having with my son when he was 16 at the time about money, about what his dreams were, how to set those things up, answering questions, and seeing how he was taking those conversations and actually applying them. But not only applying them based on what we said, he started doing research on his own. So he would come to me with questions like, as we're talking about investing, can you set up a custodial account for me? Yeah, I'll set you one up. We pick out 3 or 4 stocks. I check in with him 6 or 8 weeks later. He's added 10 more stocks.
Okay.
And that now he's day trading, and he gets paid a commission to invest other people's money. And he's 21.
Listen, I tell you, we had a conversation in the barbershop, and I'm trying to think. I feel like I was in the other location at the time, still in the suite, and that conversation we had, he was talking and he was thinking about whether or not he was gonna move, and I'm like, man, you sure you want to do that? This. And I could tell just how he was talking that, like, oh, nah, man, I'm good. I got my finances together. I got this together. I got that together. And, listening to him just talk about different trading, different stuff like that, I was impressed by the amount of knowledge that he had. You know what I'm saying? You could tell I don't know if he feels like he's a seasoned pro at this point or if he is, but it's one of those things where it was definitely evident, you know what I'm saying, and just in terms of the conversation. So I thought that was pretty cool just to see that in real time.
I got to give you the back half of that story.
Oh, okay.
You probably knew about him moving out before I knew about him moving out.
Okay.
So he asked me one day, it's like, Dad, can I talk to you? And I'm like, uh-oh, you know what? That could mean one of 2 or 3 things, right? So I sit down and he's like, hey, I think I want to move out. So I'm like, all right, cool. What are you thinking? He's like, I want to move in the city to be closer to school. Cool. Hey, when would you want to start looking? Have you thought about a budget? He's like, yeah, I thought about a budget. I've already started looking. I'm like, oh, well, you got a couple you want me to see? And he's like, well, I already signed the lease. I said, you signed the lease?
Oh, man.
And this was on a Wednesday.
Okay.
And he was like, yeah, I move in on Saturday.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, you weren't looking for my advice.
Yeah.
You weren't seeking my permission. You just letting me know. But, that's how he is. You give him a little bit, and he's going to take it and run with it full speed ahead. And the crazy thing about it is 9 months later, he's like, Dad, can I move back in?
Okay.
And I'm like, well, why do you want to move back in? He's like, well, I'm always either at work or at school, so I'm never here. It's costing me $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
I could be investing that.
So that was a question that I asked him. Because he was curious. And I think, sometimes when it comes to kids trying to learn and figuring out life, they're going to be curious about things. I appreciate the back half of this in terms of him realizing, hey, you know what? I'm wasting some money here.
Yeah.
Because my thought process when I asked, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be the adult that says, hey, go do this, go do this, go do that. Like, I'm just going to ask you some questions. Have you considered this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And my initial question was, do you think you could take that money and, flip it? Do you think you could do this? Do you think you could do that with it? And he was like, yeah, but I kind of just want to see. You know what I mean? And sometimes, you see, you find out.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think that's part of just learning, that comes with experience. I'm curious, You said if I'd asked you in 2019, it would have been an emphatic no to you being an author and you writing this book. The book stemmed from the conversations that you were having with your son. I'm curious, one, why did you name it Brick by Brick? And what is writing this meant for you? How has it, affected you personally? Has it changed anything? Has it shifted anything for you?
Yeah, no, I think it's changed me in a number of ways.
Okay.
So when I think about brick by brick, I think about the process and the journey. So often we get caught up in what the end of the journey looks like. And we get there and it's never what we fully expect it to be. So to me, brick by brick is, hey, you're building this process one brick at a time, one step at a time, one win at a time, and to sit back and enjoy each part of that journey. One, if you do it over a period of time, you're going to value it more and you're going to protect it, as opposed to you just getting a windfall without the tools.
Okay.
So that brick by brick is really your mindset around money,
Okay.
your behaviors, the consistency, and just building that muscle memory.
Okay.
And the way that it's changed me, when I go back and talk about my son, seeing him go through that process, it inspired me to write it, because it's like, hey, instead of just him or just my family, what would happen if 100 young people were impacted that way? How can we move the pendulum, forward, or shift the dynamic forward if, 1,000 people thought that way? So even as I've written this book, the goal that I've set is I want to help create 1,000 millionaires.
Okay.
Net worth.
Okay.
So that's $1 billion in wealth generated. So that's the thing. So as you kind of talk about the shift, I think it's changed me in a number of ways, because it's not just about myself and my family. It's about how can I touch other people's lives. My pastor always talks about, you want to take the shift from hoping someone blesses you to becoming a blessing for someone else. So I think by writing this, and I've got ideas on other books around stewardship and relationships, but it's all from a perspective of how can you become a blessing to somebody else.
That's huge right there. That's a big shift right there. I think it's really, really powerful. That just hit me and gave me something to think about right there. This subject, talking about legacy is so important to me. It's something that I don't think we talk about enough in our community. I ask you, what legacy meant to you, what's your definition, how you define it. And I ask that because I think oftentimes it gets boiled down to a dollar amount. Yeah. Is somebody leaving something behind? And I started using the phrase, we have to create a living legacy, meaning that like your legacy should be built while you're living. You should be very, very intentional about the legacy that you're leaving behind, And one of the things that I saw that you touched on in the book is just, not so much so the assets and things that you leave behind, while those are important, the principles, those mindset shifts that you're speaking of, those are the things that are going to impact and have a ripple effect. And so I'm curious, just thinking about that, what separates asset accumulation from legacy building?
I think they're separate, but you can also combine them in certain situations as well, right? Okay. You had hit on the fact that, many people, when they think about legacy, they think about giving. And typically it's, money or property. But, the shift for me and what I'm trying to do is not only leave the monetary things or the physical things, but also the behaviors and the traits, right? One of the letters that I have in the book is addressed to my grandchildren. I haven't had any grandkids yet, but they will be the first generation or the second generation to actually be financially literate. So it's not only their job to take, what I've taught my children and what they will inevitably teach them, but it's their job to grow it and to teach their kids. So I think when you separate the two out and you think about legacy, that's not anything about accumulation. That's more about a mindset, a behavior, and again, how can I put myself in a position to serve others? You know, the thing that I tell my son all the time, like he's well ahead of where I was at the age of 21.
Both of us.
And if he stays on this same path, by the time he's in his late 20s or early 30s, he doesn't have to work to maintain his household. He can really have time to pursue his passion and figure out why God put him here. So oftentimes, you know, we get stuck in that trap, right? From the time that we're 20 or 21, we gotta work because we gotta maintain our household. And as we make more money, we accumulate more stuff. So it becomes this vicious cycle. So my thought process is around, hey, sacrifice while you're young, let time and what you're saving continue to accumulate. So that way, as you get older, you're not on that wheel anymore. You can actually do things that can have an impact on your community.
Is there a way to measure whether or not what you're building is going to, you know, outlive you?
I think time will tell.
Okay.
You know, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this book and the Dear Legacy series overall is I think that's a way that I can measure the impact. Again, it's not just about my family and the inheritance that I'll leave from them to them in terms of, you know, monetary or a value sense. It's more so, how can I touch the world? Is there someone 20 years from now that's going to walk up to me or to my son or someone in my family and talk about how the book changed their lives and changed the lives of their family? Like, I think about Rich Dad, Poor Dad a lot.
Okay.
Most people, when they get on podcasts and do interviews, they talk about, hey, one of the first books I read that changed how I thought about money was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
I want Brick by Brick to have that same type of impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. What that makes me think of now is really looking at and understanding, like you said, this is so much bigger than your family. You started with your family and teaching your kids as you were learning and figuring out stuff. The word that pops in my mind is the responsibility. And so how did you shift from just talking about your family or thinking about your family to the greater good of everyone else? You know what I mean? Just hey, I want to be able to touch, you said, 1,000 people, you know, and just the responsibility that comes with you having financial knowledge. Because I feel like I've encountered over the years several different types of people who tend to gatekeep, you know, oh man, finances is kind of, you know,
it's a taboo.
Yeah, you know, we don't want to quite talk about it, but then the ones who will talk about it will talk about it enough so that you look at them a certain way, but they feel like it's not enough for you. Like the pie ain't big enough, so I need to kind of keep this to myself, and you know, ain't none for you. So how did you become so generous?
Well, I think it's in my nature, right? When I was in my early 20s, I got one of my first like work or corporate mentors.
Okay.
And he really became a life mentor for me. And, you know, I saw him at a work event, and I saw people just naturally gravitating towards him. And he was a black guy.
Okay.
And typically you don't see, you know, black men in executive level positions. So I found out he was in the same office that I was in, and I knocked at his door, and I'm like, hey, you know, I'd really appreciate it if you'd be my mentor. Would you be open to mentoring me? And the answer that he gave, I'd be happy to mentor you. But just know 20 years from now, when a young man comes to your door and asks you to be a mentor, it's your responsibility to say yes.
Okay.
So having situations like that, having, you know, uncles and, you know, other men of authority that I looked up to pour so freely into young people, I always grew up with a sense of it's my responsibility to help where I can help, to mentor where I can mentor. So I've never thought about this from a perspective of what can I get out of it. It's always been about how can I help someone else.
I love that. I think that's so powerful. Like I said, so many people consider themselves first, and it's almost as if they forget other people. And so I'm happy to hear that you have dialed that in, and that is a focus for you.
And I'll add a second part to that. So even as you think about that, you know, I feel like this is also God's calling for me.
Okay.
is to be that voice and to freely give that information and try to give it in a way that people will resonate with it. So that's why this book feels like a love letter, because I wrote it with my kids in mind, but I also wrote it from a perspective of a parent who doesn't know financial literacy but wants their kids to have a better life than they have. So I'm hoping that I can speak through, my voice will speak through them as well.
Well, I can tell you that it definitely spoke to me. I think there is power when you walk in purpose. And so, I'm grateful that you took it. I think sometimes, and I don't know, did you wrestle? Did you hesitate? Sometimes God will put something in your spirit. He'll put something on your heart. And you can kind of be like, I don't know, kind of almost who am I to do this? Or did you kind of leap right in and just say, you know what, I feel this, boom, I'm gonna jump into it and start, constructing this book and the Dear Legacy series?
Nah, it was something that I definitely wrestled with.
Okay.
For sure. And my relationship with God, my personal relationship with him has evolved over the last 5 years.
Okay.
So I would say I wrote the outline in 2021.
Okay.
I didn't pick it back up until early last year. And once I started writing, the words just flowed out.
Wow.
And I finished it in a matter of 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are the second person who has said that. I had a good friend. She had a book release over the summer last year, and she said that she had been fighting with sharing her story. Part of the reason that I do this podcast is because it's my firm belief that it's our testimonies, it's our stories, it's the things that we share from our life experience that actually helps other people. That helps people grow, that encourages them, that empowers them, sometimes even equips them with knowledge or resources. And, she battled, because she had all of this different life experience, some of it that she felt shame around, like, oh, no, I don't necessarily want to say this or tell people that. But it was one of those things where she said when she started writing, it just poured out.
Yeah.
And really, really powerful book as well, man. And so, again, I commend anyone who takes that call, who listens and follows their heart, follows their spirit when God is guiding in that way, man. I think it's powerful. And I think that there's a level of impact on this. And I think just the ripple effect just of this book, not even, to speak of the ones that are to come, I think it's going to be huge, man. Kind of jumping around here a little bit.
Yep.
I thought you did a phenomenal job of mentioning history, right? And the different things that I feel like sometimes often get overlooked when you look at, or when people try to explain the wealth gap in the Black community. You mentioned redlining, the loss of land, not having access and things like that. How do you acknowledge the historical injustice but still put a focus on personal responsibility and kind of agency so that you're not necessarily feeling like, hey, I'm a victim and I'm stuck here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one of those things I try to point out in two different areas, right? I shared the story about my grandfather, and he was a Korean War veteran, and he came out of the military during a time where even though the VA loan was available, it wasn't available to all of us. So I always feel like it's important to acknowledge there is definitely a gap that exists, right? And we don't always start at the same spot, but it's incumbent upon you to get the information. And as you get the information, you apply it and then you share it, because that's how we start to close that gap. So I wanted to be intentional about acknowledging that, but also sharing the story about, my friend in grad school and, how his parents saved for his college from the time he was born until he was 18. And he used that and bought a house. And he rented it out to people that were on the campus with him, which the house was paid for, so that was revenue for him. Yeah. Then he sold that house and bought a condo. He sold that condo when he got ready to get married, and he bought a house, and that house 2x in value. And he did this from the age of 18 to 30. But he started off much further than most of
Right.
us start off. So you take that story and you compare it to where my son is now. My
Yeah.
son is on
Yeah.
that path that he was on, but he's a generation behind. So even though he's doing well, these are things that I probably should have known as a young man, but I didn't, just because of the systemic racism that happened in the past. And I'm very big on getting educated and learning. Acknowledge the rules are stacked against you, but you can also navigate them effectively. You can't just put your head in the sand and hope it all goes away.
I think that's a powerful word right there. I think that seems to be one of the easiest things to do. Something that I oftentimes see people do, and I feel like there can, at times be great debate in our community.
Yeah.
Some people who will acknowledge that and, like you said, learn to navigate. And then the ones who acknowledge it and they use it as a crutch, like, hey man, I can't, navigate around this. So I think that's a great point that you made. Let me ask this: is it ever too late to start building brick by brick?
Never. It's never too late to start.
Okay.
The day that you start will be one of the best days of your life. And the key, I think, is consistency.
Okay.
Even if it's a small piece, right? I started a savings challenge on my social media.
Okay.
And it was, hey, forego one meal in terms of eating out of fast food or whatever per week. That's $50.
Okay.
And then every month add $10 to it until you get to a point to where you're saving as much as possible. Starting with $50, but you're building.
Okay.
And then as you build, that creates opportunities for you. If you don't have credit, guess what? Once you get to $500, you can get a prepaid credit card or a secured credit card. After 6 months, that graduates. Now you've gone from a $500 secured limit to a $3,000 credit limit. So you've established your credit. And you continue to build on those things. So I'm all about identify the small habits, but make them habits.
I think you use the word that I love is consistency. Like you said, when it comes to those habits, if you're consistent with them, you can put them on autopilot. And as I was listening to you, it makes me think about one of my favorite books by James Clear, Atomic Habits. And he talks about, we fall to the level of our systems, and so the things that you are able to put in place consistently, I think they're just like we talk about, money investing. There's a compounding effect, there's a compounding effect to consistency as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that, starting there and understanding that, I think is very, very powerful. What would you say is the biggest misconception about wealth from your perspective? You started out in what most people would call a hole. You're able to, accumulate. You're able to build brick by brick. What misconceptions are out there that people have concerning it, and I guess as to whether or not they can do it?
I think it's a few things, right? So the first thing is, I think people think it's impossible because, to your point, most people think it's too late for me. I can't do this, right? And then I think on the other end of that spectrum, if you win $1 million, but you don't have the proper tools to retain it, yet alone grow it, you're going to be in the same spot in a few years. So it's one of those things to where you have to manage both parts. You got to build the right relationship with money. You got to build the right habits. So that way, whether you're building or you receive a windfall, you know what it takes to grow it and to keep it. Because I think that's a part that often gets missed. People always talk about, man, if I got $1 million, I would do X, Y, and Z. No, based on your track record and your relationship with money, no, you'll be broke in 5 years, like most lottery winners are.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
That is a fact. What shifted, what changed your relationship? Going from the 18-year-old kid in college, you got survival on lockdown. You know how to do that, how to stretch a dollar to a holler. What changed in that relationship? How did it change, leading up to your mid-20s going into your 30s and even into your 40s?
Yeah. So my 20s were all about building, right?
Okay.
In terms of building my career and being able to buy more stuff.
Okay.
A lot of my 30s was around, all right, I want to have this certain type of lifestyle for my family and do these vacations, but it still revolved around stuff. As I've gotten into my late 40s, now it's about not only leaving things for people, but having freedom and flexibility to do things that I want to do things that bring me joy, to do things that will have a positive impact to my community and to the world. So it's become a lot less about I and me and more about how I can have an impact and how I can give back. So I think those are the biggest things. And then just how I thought about money. Because even when I thought about investing in my 20s and my 30s, it was, hey man, once I get 100,000, I can go and cash that out and go and do X, Y, and Z. No, as you build, you keep it there, and then there are other things that you can do to pull money out without actually cashing it in. So just learning more about money, how to leverage money to get more money, how to make your money work for you, those have all been traits that have been a part of my evolution.
Okay. Let me ask this. Is there a way to assess whether or not you have a good relationship with money? Are there some telltale signs that you have a poor relationship? There's some signs that you may have a solid relationship, but there's some areas you can do better. Like how would you approach that if somebody's listening and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I evaluate where I'm at on the spectrum?
Yeah, I think there are a number of different ways you can do it. Actually, after I wrote Brick by Brick, I wrote a companion workbook to Brick by Brick.
Okay.
And the first exercise that's in that book is calculating net worth.
Okay.
I wanted to draw a distinction between being a millionaire, because most people think being a millionaire is just having $1 million liquid, versus having $1 million net worth.
Okay.
Because those are two very different things.
Break it down for me, man. Make it plain, brother. Make it plain.
So very simply, net worth is the difference between the assets that you have, which could be your real estate, it could be a business, it could be the cash you have on hand, versus your debt.
Okay.
So if you subtract your assets from your debt, what you have left over is your net worth.
Okay.
But again, it's not just liquid. It's looking at the values of things. If you own a house that you paid $200,000 for and now it's worth $400,000, guess what? If that's all you got to calculate, you got a $200,000 net worth.
Okay.
So it's looking at it from that perspective and then systematically figuring out the things that you have to do to build from there. So my workbook starts with calculating net worth, and then it dives right into building the proper savings habits. Then it goes into credit, and then it goes into how you buy your first house, how you buy your second house, and then it goes into creating those insurance protections for you as well. So it's a very systematic way of building wealth, and it's designed to take you from wherever you are today to $1 million net worth in 5 years.
Okay.
Applying those principles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Within 5 years.
But if you look at it from all of those factors, right?
Yeah.
You can't save your way to $1 million in 5 years.
Most people try that.
Unless you bought Bitcoin back when it was $300 a share, and now you're still holding on to some. But it's, looking at your real estate. It's looking at your credit. It's looking at your investments. It's looking at if you're in a position to buy a business or if you've bought a business. All of those things factor into it. And real estate and buying a business are two of the fastest ways to increase your net worth.
So I want to touch on something that you mentioned just a moment ago. You said putting the insurance piece into place. And I read it in the book, and I was ecstatic that you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a conversation we have enough in our community about insurance, specifically life insurance, and how it benefits and how it contributes. One, is that something that began with you, or is that something that the generations, your family before, they operated that way with life insurance? Like, how did you gain that knowledge and awareness surrounding it?
Yeah. So I'll give this disclaimer first.
Okay.
I am not a financial professional.
Okay.
Anything that I'm about to share is just based on my own personal experience.
Okay.
It's not advice. But what I will say is it did start 2 generations before me.
Okay.
So my grandfather was very good friends with the gentleman who owned a State Farm agency.
Okay.
He was one of the first African-American agents
Oh, wow.
in the Southeast. And he was best friends with my father's uncle, who was also one of the first State Farm agents
Oh, wow.
in the Southeast. So growing up around both of them, you learn about insurance and the importance of insurance at an early age. My grandfather ran a funeral home for a better part of 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And he sold burial insurance.
Yeah.
So I got to see the differences between whole life, term life, burial insurance. I've seen situations where somebody died, nobody has any money to get them buried.
What?
So everybody's got to try to figure out how to do it. So, and again, this is from survival. This isn't even using life insurance as a wealth building tool. This is just, hey, if somebody dies, they got a $10,000 policy. Now this family just got, $10,000.
Yeah.
But I took my Series 6 license 20 some odd years ago. I thought about getting into the insurance agency industry, which taught me a lot about it too. So there are lots of different ways that you can not only grow your wealth, but also protect your wealth. Leveraging whole life policies, term life policies, making sure you've got the right will in place. Once you get to a certain level, establishing a trust. So again, these are things that our counterparts on the other side have known for generations.
Oh, absolutely.
And many of them have leveraged those things. But it's now something that there's more awareness from us. So again, as you're building your wealth, as you're starting to go on this journey, learning and understanding how to protect it is going to become just as valuable as building it itself.
I think what you said, our counterparts have had this information for quite some time. It's a conversation that, again, like I said, I feel like gets neglected. So I'm glad that you had the privilege of being around individuals as you were growing up, that poured in and shared that knowledge. Because I think oftentimes, I try to have the conversation with my mother and my stepfather, and there was hesitancy, like what y'all want us to die? It's like, nah, nobody want anything to happen to you, but like, here's some different things that we need to put in place, just as a protective barrier.
Yeah.
And like you said, not even beginning with trying to like leverage it as, a way to continue a legacy, but just as a protective barrier. So it's amazing to hear that and to think about that. And I'm curious when it comes to different estate planning. I often hear you mention and covered that within the book as well. We often hear people saying, hey, I have a will. Why is the will, in your opinion, why did you choose to trust over the will?
Yeah, so a lot of times a will can be contested.
Okay.
So if you don't have clearly defined rules, and even if in instances where you have clearly defined rules, it can still be contested. So it could take you a year, 2 years, or whatever to go through the legal system.
Yeah, probate is
fully defined. Yeah, and it's expensive. So you could blow through most of whatever's in that insurance policy or whatever's in that will just fighting it in court. So having that trust as an additional layer can be important depending on where you are within your financial journey. Trust may not be for everyone, but as you get to certain levels of wealth or property or business, having those mechanisms in place become critical. And even as you think about this wealth building journey, right? We start as simple as, hey, let's start saving money, and then let's start investing, and then let's start building your credit. At a certain point, you're going to get to a level where you're going to need that professional advice to help you round everything out. So this book is designed to get you to that point.
Okay.
But I wanted to touch all of the factors and all of the areas that I think a younger person or a person that's starting from scratch would touch.
I think that's great. Like I said, just positioning it and understanding that you're going to need all of these different aspects in order to build and preserve wealth and to continue the legacy.
Yeah.
There were a couple of things that you mentioned in the book, and we talked earlier. You said it's never too late for somebody to start building. Being able to start where they're from or where they're at, being able to start where they're at and moving forward from there. What do you say to the person who's more concerned about the pace? I know you mentioned, or you have a quote in the book about pace and direction kind of being more important than pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, you're not going to get to it overnight. And if you get to it overnight, you probably haven't learned all the lessons to keep it. So, always part of my prayer every night is God order my steps. And the same thing applies when it comes to wealth building. You want to consistently, one foot in front of the other, build, this habit, build this routine. And you'll get there faster than you think. So let's say today you start and you've got terrible credit and you don't have anything in savings, but you start saving $50 a month. You get to that $500, you get a secured credit card, you start the process of repairing your credit, but you're also saving money. Within 2 years, if you manage your credit repair right, you're in a position to buy a home. Buying a home is one of the fastest ways to build your net worth.
Okay.
Because your home is going to appreciate over time. And then once you do that and you're still investing, you still got the right behaviors, all of those other things happen quickly. It's just the most important thing is to take that first step and be consistent in your journey.
Is there a brick that most people ignore that will become a crack later?
Yeah. And it's one, transparently, I ignore from time to time too. We all like nice things.
Okay.
So it's that, how do you phrase it? The delayed gratification.
Okay.
A lot of us have difficulty with the delayed gratification. The way that I tried to teach my kids to combat that is to look at opportunity cost. So if we go back to what we talked about with my son and getting the apartment, right? If you take that $1,800 or $2,000 a month over 12 months, that's $24,000 lost that he could have been investing.
Oh, yeah.
So as he started to prepare to move back in, I reinforced that with him. And it's not only, hey, this is $24,000 over this first year. No, if you take that same $24,000 and push it out 5 years from now, that number becomes a lot closer to $10,000.
Yeah.
You push it out another 10 years, that number is probably going to be $40,000. So it's not just the money you're foregoing in the short term, it's the compound interest from that money too. So reframing how your mind thinks about it and getting out of the instant gratification that I think we're all programmed with these days is probably that one brick that I would say would derail you.
I feel like that's probably easier said than done.
It is. And that's why the book really talks about reframing how your mind thinks about money. It's the same thing. It's not an easy thing to do, but you've got to be intentional and you've got to want it enough to do it. And that's why I framed it up as a love letter. The way that I parent, I'm not a drill sergeant type of parent.
Okay.
I'm more of a motivator, encourager. I talk to my kids growing up a lot about grit. So it's knowing, hey, you're going to have these hard times. I ain't going to beat you over the head. You got to figure out how to navigate it. And I'm here to help guide you through that process. So I think taking that approach, instead of making people feel bad about where they're starting, they will have a sense of, I can do it. I just need to follow these steps. And that's why I offer the quotes in the chapters. That's why I've got the letters in there, because those are all meant to encourage, motivate, and inspire.
I love it. One of my favorite quotes, I feel like you said something about a short-term flex versus like a long-term like foundation or something like that.
Yes, sir.
And I was like, okay, well, I said, well, he got some stuff in here, man. So I really, really loved it, really, really enjoyed it. And I think it's vital.
Yeah.
I think it's vital to consider it. I think it's easy when you've grown up, you maybe not had access to everything that you wanted. And so you get some money in your pocket and you're fighting the urge. You're fighting yourself like, oh, nah, man, I deserve this.
Yep.
I've worked hard. I've earned this, and sure enough, you have. But like you said, there's power in that delayed gratification because, you don't want to stifle the growth that you have. But I feel like you don't want to neglect, the desire to have things as well.
I think there's a balance. There's a balance to it, right? I don't want you to be a hermit and not live life, but you've got to make responsible decisions. Those two words that you called out, I deserve, those are some dangerous words, brother. Because those I deserve words can get you in a whole bunch of trouble. Because those will turn into 3 words after a while. I don't deserve to have bad credit.
Right.
Or I wish I had not spent that money some years ago on whatever it was. So, just, again, reframing how you think about money. Money is not a tool to get things.
Okay.
Money is a tool that's designed to give you freedom if you leverage it properly.
And so I love that. What is freedom to you?
As I get older, I don't have grandkids yet.
Okay.
But I will at some point, probably here in the next 5 to 10 years. Freedom for me is going to be having a lot of land.
Okay.
And being able to have my grandkids around me.
Okay.
And being able to spend time with them. And also being able to freely give back to, my church, my community, walk in God's purpose, and not have to worry about how I balance my time because I've got, this work obligation that I've got to tend to. So to me, that's freedom.
Okay. That's powerful. And I love, one, you still have a focus on family. You still have a focus on others. You still have a focus on community and just walking in purpose. And so I love that. What do you want your grandchildren to be able to say about you in 30 years?
One, I want them to say that I was a God-fearing man.
Okay.
So that's very important. I want them to have a front row seat to my faith walk. But then after that, I want them to be able to say with pride that I changed the world in a positive way. So those are the things. And then I think the greatest form of flattery is people wanting to be just like you. So, early on in my life, my dad was my hero. I wanted to be just like him. But I've had other heroes as my dreams have grown and gotten bigger. And now it's about, hey, how can I inspire the next generation? So how can I raise a bunch of grandkids is like, hey, I want to be like my pop when I grow up. I want to do exactly what he did or be like he was or love the way that he loved, not just, from a monetary standpoint, but, how I made them feel when I was around them.
And I think that's really, really powerful. Again, I think, as I listen to you talk, as I read the book, I hear your heart, the love that you have for people, for others, for your family, and just others. And I think it's so powerful, man. And I truly believe that, like, the ripple effect of this, I can't say it enough, it's probably going to be bigger than you can imagine, man.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you and what's to come. Now, this question. If the book disappeared tomorrow, man, what principles from the book must survive?
Saving, investing, protecting your credit at all costs, and then understanding that the way to exponentially grow your wealth is through ownership. So real estate, businesses. So I think those are principles that need to stay in place. But also, having the right heart posture. So not just building wealth to build wealth for your own selfish reasons, but how can you, take those principles and help inspire other people? How can you bless other people?
I'm going to ask a couple more questions, man. What did it take? What does building brick by brick require from an emotional standpoint?
One, you've got to have a good support group.
Okay.
Right. So I've been married for 3 years now.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. And, we've been on this journey for 6 years now.
Okay.
But when we walked into it, we had similar mind frames or mindsets when it came to money, what we wanted our families to look like, what we wanted our legacies to look like. And she was really the person that helped to challenge me in terms of, hey, how do you put this to paper and help people? So I would say, kind of starting with that as the backdrop. And then, once you've got a person, whether you're doing it by yourself or you've got a person that's with you, making sure that there's alignment in those areas, and then just driving the consistency.
So, what would you say alignment looks like? Because what you spoke to, 100% is biblical. Same passion, one mind, like-minded. One goal. What does that look like? Because I think that's even something that you're touching on right now that I didn't even think about until this moment is what building wealth looks like when you have a spouse. Yeah, it's easy to consider yourself like, oh yeah, I can do this with me because I'm gonna be disciplined, I'm gonna be this. But when you have a spouse or a partner, that can make things more challenging, or it can
make them easier.
Yeah, much easier. Yeah. And accelerate growth.
Yeah. So I think when you're aligned, having a spouse becomes the multiplier because now instead of just one income, you've got two, and that will give you more flexibility and allow you to scale quicker. But if you're not in alignment, the faster you save money, they may be spending it just as fast, if not faster. So you could be having a negative effect, even with all your best efforts. So I think there has to be not just one conversation, but consistent conversations. There's got to be a shared vision. And then you guys have to together model that consistency.
Okay, so you just popped up something in my mind, man, and I'm going back and I'm thinking through the book. You mentioned having the weekly money meetings. Okay, are the weekly money meetings necessary to get an update, or are they more so for building consistency?
I think initially it's building consistency.
Okay.
Which is why I think having a frequent cadence like once a week is so important. But as you start to build the muscle, maybe it only has to be once a month or once a quarter. And then as you have those meetings, the dynamics of it become a lot different because you've gotten the behavior down. Okay. Now it becomes, all right, what are we doing with the money that we're saving? How is it returning on our investments? What's our 5-year plan? How are we, progressing towards that plan, and then making those tweaks along the way. But I think the weekly cadence is important because you've got to build the consistency. And even with the savings challenge, it wasn't, hey, save $50 this month. No, it's forego a meal. So that's $12.50 every week to get to your $50. And then from there, you increase it, by $10 every month throughout. But it's to build that consistent routine.
And this is another question just popping in my mind. Do you have a preference when it comes to being with a spouse in terms of how you guys position money? Is it something where you recommend everybody having joint accounts or separate accounts? Is it important to be able to see what they're doing, or is it just, more so on the communication side? And I'm just going to take your word.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the dynamics of your relationship, right? Okay. So even with my wife and I, we reconnected after 30 years. So we've been grown adults for a long time, not having to, answer to people. So for us, what works for us is we've got a joint account, but then we've got separate accounts. We own a business, so that business is off to itself and it's got its own account. And, our communication is just around what each one of us is doing, but at the same time, knowing what our short, medium, and long-term goals are and what our obligations to the achievement of those goals is.
Okay. So I hope y'all are listening.
There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I can promise you that.
This is my final question.
All right.
If today's is someone's first brick, what should it be?
The first brick should be, well, and I'll preface it with it depends on where you are.
Okay.
But the first brick I would always say is saving.
Okay.
You make sure you've got your emergency fund built. So if your first brick is going to be building your emergency fund, let's start by saving that $50.
Okay.
If your first brick is going to be repairing your credit, then let's map out a plan for that. If it's buying a house, let's figure out where you are. So again, with that workbook, it's designed to take you from wherever you are and move you forward. But it breaks it down to the basics. Let's understand where you are first. Let's lay out your goals, and then we'll systematically work towards you achieving your goals.
Okay, wonderful. Terrance, this has been my absolute pleasure. I'm going to ask you just to expand just a little bit here. Before we wrap up, can you tell me a little bit more about your challenge that you have? I think you said you've been challenging folks on social media.
Yep.
I want you to tell me where people can find the book, where they can find the workbook that's actually going to put some real life application into the principles that are found in the book. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, if somebody wanted to connect with you,
Yep.
can you let us know where we can find these things?
Yeah. So I'm at Dear Legacy
Okay.
on Instagram. So you can reach me there. My book is on Amazon. So if you go into the search and type Brick by Brick by Terrance Malone, it will pop up.
Okay.
And not only will my book pop up, but my workbook will also pop up. And then if you're on TikTok, it's Dear Legacy as well. So those are the ways that you can reach me. And then in terms of the savings challenge, right? Because that was the other part.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, so I'm encouraging people on this savings challenge. Again, it's starting at $50 a month, so $12.50 per week.
Okay.
So I've been as consistent as I'm comfortable being in social media, because this is still a new world for me in terms of encouraging people. But the goal is to let's get to $500. And if everyone adds $10 a week, by June or July, we'll be at that first $500.
Okay.
And then from there, we can pivot. We can either take that $500 and invest it in a brokerage account and keep building, or depending on where you are from a credit perspective, you can get a secured line of credit.
So let me ask this: with the challenge, is this something that you have a private group that people can join, or is this something that's just open for everybody? You're just putting it out for everyone.
It's open for everybody. So I'm still building my social media presence. So again, this is about everybody. And as you go on your journey, like, I want to know where you are, right? If I've got a personal goal of building 1,000 millionaires, people have to let me know as they're making progress. So I'm encouraging people to reach out on social media to ask me questions. The responses that I've gotten from people in terms of how the book has touched their lives, both through social media or people that I know just reaching out to me directly, has been tremendous. And like I said, it's inspired me to say, hey, I've got a voice, and there are more things that I can share with the world.
I'm going to put a challenge out here myself to go along with your challenge and this conversation, because I think it's such a powerful conversation. It can be an uncomfortable conversation when we get to talking about money and wealth, because sometimes people feel shame around it. I'm not where I feel like I want to be. All of those sort of different types of things. And I just want people to, if you're listening, if you hear this, one, identify one financial habit that you inherited and ask yourself, is this a brick that's going to help you build? Or is this a crack that's going to pull down your legacy? Again, this is the Authentic Exchange. I'm Josh Bird, and this is more than conversations. It's connection.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Thank you. Let me ask you this. Is there anything else that you want to add that I might have missed, or that you wanted to make sure that the audience heard?
I'll give you a word of encouragement.
Okay.
Right. The most difficult thing a person can do is acknowledge where they are. Right. I think that initial challenge in the workbook can be humbling in terms of calculating your net worth, because a lot of us will start with a negative net worth. But just because you start in that space doesn't mean you have to finish in that space. And you've got to have a certain amount of transparency and vulnerability to say, hey, this is where I am, but that's okay. We're going to keep pushing one step at a time, one brick at a time.
I appreciate you, my brother. Thank
Yes,
you so
sir.
much.